What's up, everybody? It's your man J-Rock coming at you with another episode of the J-Rock Show today, and I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend himself, JK in the building. What's good, man?
I appreciate the high praise. What an introduction. I appreciate you having me on the show here. We had a little bit of issues last week, so I'm glad to be here today because I think we picked a nice little topic to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. And that topic being, one of the big storylines of the week in the release of the official top 25 preseason rankings. And, starting right off at the top, Miami at 1, Duke at 2. What's your thoughts on that?
I think at the top it's accurate. But I think Tennessee, fresh off an appearance in the national championship, at 6 is way too low. They brought back their two core pieces from last season in Trey Turner and Henrik Bekic, but they're below Rutgers, a freshman-led team by Dylan Harper. I like Dylan Harper. I think he's going to have a really good season at Rutgers, but I cannot justify putting Rutgers over Tennessee.
Right, and that is one that I kind of, scratch my head at as well. In my ideal scenario here, Tennessee, they definitely have, less, unknowns coming back with their experience. What they're bringing back in Trey Turner and Henrik Vekic. But then on the other side, with what they are bringing in, incoming freshman-wise, nothing really, notable, truthfully. And then Rutgers is the polar opposite, outside of Kamari and Goodyear. There's really not, a lot of, put your money on it type of experience returning, but they do have, great incoming pieces coming in. So it's like kind of the yin and the yang polar opposite there between the two. So it's like...
Yeah, but I'll take the proven talent. I'll take the proven talent every single time.
Right, and I'm not disagreeing with you there. I'm just like, it's like kind of a yin and a yang situation,
Absolutely. I understand what you mean. I think another thing we got to talk about is UCLA at number 7. Jalen Snell, I think he's in for a big season. I really like Oklahoma at number 10, Suno Chapa, and Juan Miguez. And then Michigan at 11 with Lorenzo Phenom and Samuel Bogus are all teams that I think find really, really interesting, J-Rock.
Yeah, definitely. UCLA, I like Jalen Snow as much as anybody. But that's a little high for where I had them personally. Top 25, yes, but I would put Texas over them. I would honestly put North Carolina, at 12 over them without question. And to be honest, I'd almost put Alabama over them too. I think Alabama is really, I'm going to be hot take right off the rip here, but to me, Alabama is at least a top 12, top 10 team. That is my hot take right off the rip.
I don't know if I agree with that. I like Alabama a lot. I really like DJ Childs. I like who they've brought in with Coco Bryce and their other freshman, Aiden Weaver. But Alabama's about where they should be, maybe even a little lower in my book. I like Ohio State more than them with Bo Pagnotti and Cody Johnson. I like Memphis more with my boy Outlaw, Lysidarius Outlaw.
LCD, let's go.
LCD. I like Purdue more than Alabama with Pierre DuPont and Majere Williams. And Gonzaga with Luffy and Caden Shipp.
Yeah, Purdue is the one there that I kind of like. I don't know if I put them over Alabama personally, but kind of going back to UCLA and the Pac-12, the Pac-12 is truly, and we've talked about this before, off camera, truly a conference where there's several teams right off the top that could truly be in contention by the end of the season. Like, UCLA, USC, I like what they brought in JMO and Gabe Pope, and Oregon, as well. I think there is a lot of potential
untapped potential. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say untapped potential.
And let's not forget Arizona either. And, Theodophilus Hyleton, I know I butchered that there, and Corey Yams as well. So that's 4 teams that could realistically have a shot at winning the Pac-12 conference.
I like USC with Pope and JMO. I like Arizona with Yams, Zane Davis, Theophilus Hilton. That's a really strong roster. Like you mentioned, Oregon had a really good recruiting class. Even Colorado with the Vaughn brothers, you got to give some credit.
Colorado, yes, as well.
This is a strong conference.
Yeah, got to show some love to them boys out in Boulder. And then, kind of moving conferences here, looking at the Big East and UConn. Like it's been known, they lost, they lost a lot of key contributors to the SWBA draft. They do bring in Norman Nations, and I believe they returned Fareed Redmond. They did, make it all the way to the Final Four of Basketball Bedlam this past season. But
they're 2 years removed from a national championship.
Right, that as well, but given the fact of what they lost, and, Norman Nations, exceptional player, he can be the type of player that, goes out and gets you 15, 17, even 20 points a night that he's shown he could do at points in the season the past 2 years with Lakeshore Drive. But not enough to where I would really constitute them as being a top 5 team. But I think they're definitely still low at the same time for where they should be.
I think we need to talk about a theme at the bottom of these rankings. A lot of freshman-run teams. You got Virginia with Cole Webb, and they have Johnny Baldwin as well. You have UNLV with Keontae Smythe, Jarrell Beauchamp, and Sky Durant. You got Illinois with their Lakeshore trio of Zay Gore, D'Angelo Jordan, and Kyrie Holtzclaw. You got Villanova with Justin Bell and Mugen Williams. And you got Marquette even with Lucas Spanks, Alex Rodriguez, and AJ Blaylock. And then you even got Joffett in Missouri at 25, who I don't believe should be ranked. That's a lot of freshmen at the bottom of these rankings, and I think that's a lot of turmoil that we can't talk about.
Right, for sure. And, Missouri, I definitely agree with you there. Not even with Joffett, too much unknown there to, put them in the top 25 in my mind. And honestly, you mentioned Virginia, and I'll throw New Mexico in there as well. I'm not honestly sure that I would have Virginia or New Mexico in my top 25. Not discrediting Ireland early and, New Mexico and the talent that they have and what the coaching staff has brought in. But there are several schools I feel like got snubbed, and which we will get to, later in the show talking about that I feel like should be in, and I'd put them in over, say, Virginia and New Mexico.
I like Virginia. I think they deserve to be in. Johnny Baldwin and Cole Webb. I think that's a really strong duo. If we're talking about conferences and teams that we think can surprise people, I think we have to look right at the Big Ten. We've talked about the Big 12 with Kansas and Texas and Oklahoma and how that's a 3-team race. But we haven't talked about how strong the Big Ten is right now. We have Rutgers with Dylan Harper and Jermaine Owens. We have Michigan with Lorenzo Phenom and Big Shot Bogg. We have Ohio State with Cody Johnson and Bo Pagnotti. And then you got Illinois in the top 25 with D'Angelo Jordan and Zay Gore. But and Purdue, who I almost forgot to mention, with DuPont and Myjere Williams. But I think we have to talk about Michigan State, who I would not be surprised to see be ranked at some point this season. Tom Izzo, he's made 9 Final Fours in his storied tenure in East Lansing. And now they have Jai Edge and Malcolm Chamberlain. This Michigan State team can do some damage, J-Rock.
Yeah, and without question, Malcolm Chamberlain has definitely... We've seen it in, open runs and, social media and whatnot. He's definitely been putting in the work this offseason. And sticking with the Big Ten here, and you mentioned Illinois. Illinois, a little at 22, a little bit low for me. A little bit low for me.
Who would you rank them over?
Who would I rank them over? I'd rank them over Virginia. I'd rank them over New Mexico. I mean, to me, they're at least, should be a little higher in that, even maybe possibly in that 10 to 15 range. I'd almost put them over Memphis, and New Mexico and Virginia. I mean, definitely a few schools that I would throw in ahead of them, and UNLV, honestly, as well, I would almost put them over.
I think people are sleeping on Villanova. I think Justin Bell's going to have one of the best freshman campaigns in the country. We know that guy can score the basketball, J-Rock.
He can. He definitely showed what he could do for the Rocky Mountain Monsters, and just his ability to score in every possible way. That's something we don't really see that much.
And that doesn't even account for Lucas Banks and down in Marquette, right below Villanova.
AJ Blaylock as well.
Yeah, I think we have to talk about Missouri, though, and Japheth Towns. I mentioned this to you, but I want to say it again for the viewers at home. I think this Missouri team reminds me a lot of not only the Michael Porter Jr. era in Missouri, hate to remind you of that, J-Rock, but the Anthony Edwards era in Georgia, where this top talent goes to a smaller basketball school, establishes himself as a top prospect, and they don't have an incredible season. I don't think that Missouri should be ranked whatsoever. I don't think Japheth Towns moves the needle alone. Japheth Towns alone moves the needle enough for Missouri to be a top 25 team. We know how good he is. We know how well he can score the basketball, but he's always played alone. Give this guy some help, and I think they're a top 15 team, but he has none.
Right, yeah, and I definitely agree with you that Missouri is not a top 25 team in my mind. And like you said, Marquette, kind of going back to you talking about Marquette, AJ Blaylock, I think, will be one of the better big defenders in all of SimWorld U. And back to Missouri, there's not a lot of consistency that you can bank on that they have coming back. You say they bring in Jamari Holofield, David Duffy, they flipped from Temple. Not to discredit the other players on their roster, but one-man shows never work. They never work.
However, I have to give them credit because I think Dylan Bannon has all the makings to be a breakout star for this team. They're calling him 6'8" JJ Redick.
A 6'8" JJ Redick, man. That is truly a scary thought.
If Dylan Bannon or David Drafin, if one of those guys can take a leap and establish themselves as a legitimate second option behind Japheth, then yeah, I think they're a top 20 team, if not better. But there's too many question marks for Missouri to be a top 25 team right now.
Right, definitely. And do I think, they could be a top 25 team, at least in my eyes, at some point during the season? Sure, anything's possible. But another name I think to look at for Missouri too, Jamari Holofield. I really like what he brings to the floor and the versatility there. But like you said, too many question marks to, too many unknowns to put them up into the top 25.
We talked a lot about the top 25 themselves, but what about the biggest snubs of this list, J-Rock? Who do you think was snubbed from the initial rankings of this season?
The initial rankings of the season. I mean, there's several you could look at. Auburn comes to mind. I really like what they brought in.
I like that.
Bevinson Patches and Honcho Hardwick. That's definitely... Bruce Pearl definitely highlighted the defensive side of the floor with his incoming class, and I really like that approach by him. And then you add Barkley James in on top of that, who might not be a top scoring option right away, but I think it is an ideal situation, out of his brother's shadow, out of Benari Shadow to where he can sort of ramp up that growth and production.
Absolutely. I really like this Auburn team. I love what Bruce Pearl's doing down there in Auburn. Bevinson Patch is one of the best defenders from the SimWorld prep recruiting cycle. He can do everything on the floor. He feels like a guy that will do anything to help his team win, and that's why I like Bevinson Patches as a player. Barkley James, I think he has all the makings. We know what he can do as a shooter. He shot over 40% from deep in his senior season with Heartland. So I think he has all the makings of being a go-to guy for Auburn on the offensive end. I think it'll take time for him to get used to the extra touches, but I think he will thrive in that situation, Barkley James. And I like that Honcho Hardwick pickup too. I think this Auburn team can do damage. But you talked about Barkley James. I want to talk about Benari James. That Davidson squad with Nick Hugo and Benari James is absolutely better than what Missouri's got going on with Japheth Towns. I think they deserve to be ranked.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And another school, St. Mary's. St. Mary's is another school I would throw in over Missouri as well. Bringing in Kai Newby, Dime Hardaway, and snagging another in-state commit in Brendan Romine to kind of shore up the front court. I really like the backcourt of what they're going to be creating over there in Cali.
I agree with you right there. I really, really do like this St. Mary's team. The Gales are really cooking right here. They brought in Kai Newby, a guy who I've got to watch on multiple occasions, and I can say he is a legitimate star in the making. Kai Newby, he was great. He was great for APAC last season.
That he was.
So I have to give credit. Dime Hardaway, love that pickup, and that's on top of having Terrell Coulter. So that's a really strong trio right there for St. Mary's. So I think they absolutely deserve to be ranked. But there are a couple teams that I think deserve to be ranked that I don't think we've really touched on yet. One of those teams, Wake Forest. You got J.C. Graham, you got Luca Jesse, you got Carter Fields coming in as that incoming freshman. That's a really, really strong team down in Winston-Salem. I think people are really, really sleeping on what Wake Forest is capable of. And Baylor. Scott Drew won a national championship just a few years ago now. And now you bring in Red Joyner. You have this star-studded roster in Baylor. We're talking about Kansas and Oklahoma and Texas in the Big 12. But where's all the love for Baylor? The Bears have what it takes to win this conference, and I don't think you can really question that. Tristan Holmes is great. Deshaun Jameson. Jaquan Abdallah. They have talent.
Right, the talent is definitely there. And, Scott Drew always has, his Bears squad contending in the Big 12 and, always contending for postseason play as well. And one more thing I wanted to bring up here is you look at, let's say the Big 12. Let's use the Big 12 as an example. And then you compare it to the ACC. Or maybe you have another conference in mind when I ask this question. Which conference do you think is the deepest, in terms of the number of teams that could truly contend?
I think there's 3 or 4. I don't think there's an otherworldly number. But I think we have to talk about 1 or 2 more teams that are not ranked that could be. What about Arkansas? Brought in Nick Bowie. Brought in DJ Wagner. Brandon Phillips and Dijon Jones are a really strong duo in the backcourt.
Yeah, that
definitely. Arkansas team could do damage with Coach Cal.
Yeah, I think I would definitely. They're another team, obviously, that I would put over Missouri as well. And I think DJ Wagner is a guy who is poised to break out even more, in this next upcoming season. Nick Bowie, another guy who, really, after all the struggles and, adversity that Beyond the Arch had to deal with this past season, he was the most consistent force for them in the middle of all that. And I think he is only going to continue to get better.
I don't think that that's a crazy take whatsoever. I think Temple and South Carolina are other teams that can surprise people, but there's so many. SimWorld U is loaded with talent, and we know that. But I think that we have to talk about Kentucky. Do you think they were ranked too right? just right? Too high or too low, J-Rock?
A little too high for me personally. And I'll tell you why. They do have one of the better recruiting classes, in SimWorld U. I will say that. But, given the fact that, new coach in Mark Pope, new system, still, unknowns with this group, given those, facts, top 5 for me is a bit of a reach. I think that 12, or I think within the top 12 or the borderline top 10 would be more realistic than top 5 for me personally. Not to discredit at all the talent that they're bringing in or what they have. And like we've talked about, Jamison Johnson also should be an athletic freak for them this upcoming season.
I think that's well said, J-Rock. I think Jamison Johnson could end up being the next number 1 pick in the SWBA draft. 7'1", versatile, phenomenal footwork, can protect the rim, can pretty much do everything you need him to do from a big man. Everything you want a modern, prototypical big man to do, Jamison Johnson can do. He is a man amongst boys. I think the only person you can say that might be ahead of Jamison Johnson in the Player of the Year race is Cooper Flagg. And I don't even know if I would say that.
Right, and Jamison Johnson, he's a guy that kind of gives me, going to be going a little throwback here, gives me Oscar Tshiebwe vibes with that build, but more style of the game, of the stretch game, than like in Anthony Davis. Because, remember Oscar Tshiebwe when he was at Kentucky? I mean, he'd get the ball, within 6 feet of the bucket, and I mean, you're just not stopping him. You're not stopping him.
It's such a different beast, though.
Exactly. And then you add in, the fact that he can do so much more on both ends of the floor. It's makes him an even scarier player than I think what Tshiebwe was, and I think he could be up there, with one of the better big men that Kentucky has had in the last, say, 20, 25 years.
I see a lot of Anthony Davis.
Right.
I don't want to set unrealistic expectations for the guy, but that's what I see.
Hey, I definitely like that comparison, Kentucky, definitely not a team to sleep on. Personally, 5 is a little high. Do I think they'll be top 5 at some point? Or they could be, at least. Very possible. But I'm just not ready to say top 5 yet. I think probably that 8 to 12 range is more realistic in my mind at this point.
And I absolutely understand that, but I think here's some food for thought, J-Rock. Oscar Tshiebwe is 6'8", 255. You know what Jamison Johnson weighs in at? He's 7'1", 270.
Yep.
7'1", 220. He's going to need to put on weight, but if he gets to 260, 270, you're not going to stop him.
Yeah, no, if he adds that extra, even say, 25 to 30 pounds, that alone, little bit of weight would only help improve his, dominance down low.
And remember, he's on like the garbage diet of a college student. I know that all too well. But, like, Kentucky still has Glory Tate, they still have Adonis Knight, Victor Soto, Trav Cunningham. This is a very, very good team. Are they better than their rival Tennessee? No. But first year with Mark Pope, I have high expectations.
Yeah, definitely. I think the sky is the limit for where we will see Kentucky. And I think the SEC is going to be a very intriguing conference to watch.
I think there's so many intriguing storylines across SimWorld U. That's just the start of it.
Yeah, definitely the parity of talent in SimWorld U is definitely going to be one of the cooler things about this upcoming season. Is, you've got your typical blue bloods, like I've said before, but then you've got your schools that are, going to be contending or in that mix, like a UNLV, a St. Mary's. I'll even throw a Marquette or a, in there. And just in a league where anything is possible, that I think is going to be awesome to see this upcoming season.
I think I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm so excited, and this top 25 rankings got me even more excited because there's so much I disagree with, and there's going to be so much change and so much parity, like you said.
Yeah, without question, there's definitely going to be a lot of talent throughout. All right, y'all, that's going to do it for today's episode of the J-Rock Show. JK, thank you for joining me, my man. This was a lot of fun.
Anytime, my guy. You say the word, I'll be back on in a second.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely have you on again at some point in the future. Everyone, this has been J-Rock and JK on the J-Rock Show. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week. And as always, see the game, be the game.